needed something kind of small to do. So again, so Antike won the prize this time. This is an interesting game in terms of my history with it. Maybe not all that interesting, but I think it's kind of neat. The first game that kind of got me back into board gaming and got me motivated to get my collection back and stuff like that. Not that, you know, that wasn't a goal, but I'm not very good at getting things done. Trust me on that. So, you know, my life didn't really require board games going on in it, and then I ran into Imperial, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And that made me buy a few others. And my liking of Imperial and the Rondel system, and this is the first of the Rondel games, I think, convinced me, hey, I want to take a look at this one. Add to that the, you know, subject matter, if you will, which this is still a Euro, but you know, it has to do with the ancient growth, the civ building type ideas on a very light level. So it kind of appealed to me concept-wise. I wanted to give it a shot and see what happens. So it was on my want list, but it was always more than I wanted to pay for it. I don't know why. Then the second edition came out and the prices started going down, but they never quite went down enough. I figured, well, you know, I know improvements were made in the second edition. Yeah. I ended up getting a chance to play it at the board game shop, and then during the flea market, another purchase this year, the guy I played it with ditched his copy there for a reasonably small amount of money, especially considering I didn't have to have it shipped. So I'm going with it. Anyway. Let's go over the rules. I'm sure other people go over them much, much better than I do, but I just want to solidify them in my own brain so, you know, you can skip over this part and watch somebody who knows what they're doing, because I've played it once and read the rules once. Okay, so one of the key, take a look at components. You've got two maps. This side, the other side has the Western Med. I'm doing this side, I don't know why. It's what I did before. Just because it seems more antiquated, if you like. You've got that. You've got a horde of little wooden meeple type things and boats and stuff like that to cover what your you know, board presence is. There's cards for each player. Now this holds from 2 to 6. Special rules for 2 players, but 3 to 6 is the basic game. I'm playing it in 6 because that has an additional facet to it, which I think makes it kind of, it puts it into kind of a sudden death type situation that kind of excites me. The board itself has representations of different commodities. Those are marble, gold, iron, and then you have tokens to represent the production for those. You have coins, which can substitute as any of them. Temples, which improve the production and defense of cities. And you have these. These are your goal to the game. In the 6-player game, you want to get 7 of them. And you get these for doing something. So, for example, yeah, let's skip this one, but here, for every 3 temples that you own, you get one of these, I don't know, poetic people? I'm not sure. And you have to have that number of temples at the time. So it's not like, oh, I had 3 temples and now I got 3 new ones, but I lost the old ones. No, you have to have that particular number, but you don't lose the guy if you lose some of the temples. So if you had 3 temples and you go down to 2 and you go back up to 3, you're still fine, nothing's changed, but you still have to get up to 6 at one time to get this second leader. Same thing here, he gets you it for city zones. Cities are these discs. Navigation is how many seas that you have boats in. This is kind of a tough one to get. And also appears to be fairly limited. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I mean, probably not in relation to some of the others. And it's hard for someone to stop you from getting it if you're aiming for it. I mean, they can sink your ships. This one is know-how. Each time you get an additional know-how, you get one of those leaders. Well, no. Each time you get the first know-how of its class, you get one of those leaders. And we'll explain the differentiation there. Because the first person to discover something is important. Everyone else is just trying to keep up with the technology. They don't get a victory point card, but it's cheaper for them. Okay. Starting locations are determined by these cards, which are dealt out depending on the number of players. There may be more, there may be less. There's a little bit of, mechanical aspect to determining where people actually start. The cards tell it, and the first player is going to be the guy with the dot for that number of players. In this case, the Babylonians. Okay. So, at the beginning of each turn, and this is one place where maybe a starting player has some effect, everybody just gets a coin. I can deal those out to begin the game, because nothing exciting happens before this. Okay. Gives them some buying capacity. Then, on your turn, well, on the first turn of the game, you just drop your piece somewhere on the rondel and you take that action. From then on, you're going to be allowed to move 1 to 3 spaces clockwise on the rondel without paying anything. Each additional space you want to move, though, costs you a coin, very much like Imperial there. And each of these gives you an action, and we'll explain those actions. However, first, let's talk about the rest of your turn. The next thing you get to do is you get to found cities. In order to found cities, you have to have a military unit in the province the city is to be built in, and you pay the bank a marble, an iron, and a gold, and you can put one of your discs on the board. And then after that, you check whether any of your activities have caused you to gain a person. Okay. So, what do the different things do? Well, 3 of them are production: marble, iron, and gold. And they're opposite the thing that they produce. When you land on one of those, each of your cities that produces that stuff, and that's why I kind of don't want to cover these. They show them covered in the game. You can kind of see what it is by the rim around it, but it bothers me. When you land on one of those, you produce one element of that kind of thing for each city you own of that thing. Well, that's the base rule. Each player starts with 1 of each city. If you have a temple in a city, it triples the production. And then there's also these market abilities, which also increase your production slightly by 1 or 2 pips. So those are easy enough. The temple space. When you land on there, you can build additional temples. They cost you 5 marble each, and you can put 1 beside each city. You can get a lot of marble for these. Obviously, they have their value. Arming. Arming allows you to build troops. You're only allowed to build these where you already own a city. You can only build 1 in normal cities and up to 3 troops in cities which have a temple. These can be either galleys or regular land forces. And they cost you just 1 iron each. Know-how. Know-how is going to cost you gold, and you have to buy the first level first. And you see these cost you 7 if you're the first person in. If you're not the first person in, they cost you 3. And they give you a bonus. And then going from first to second level costs you more, 10 or 5 going up there. If you're the first person getting there at the level, you get a scholar. Okay. And there's, I think, 8 of them, 1 for each. What are the special abilities? Well, wheel and roads add to your movement rate of your troops. Your troops generally have one thing they can do in a turn, in a maneuver action. If you add this, well, now they get two things they can do. Here are three. Sailing and navigation add the number of things that your fleets can do. Market and currency give you, when you do a production action, that many additional resources of the type you asked for. And monarchy and democracy increase the defensive value of your cities. Now, the defensive value of your cities is also increased by having a temple. This means a city can have a defensive value up to 5 with democracy and a temple. Okay. If you choose the maneuver action, this is sort of the last thing. You can do military actions in your turn. And each little meeple you have can move based on its movement rate or action rate. Normally 1 can go up to 3. And it can move that many land barriers. These are the red borders. It can fight. However, it has to keep an action left if it wants to try to conquer a city. Fighting doesn't cost an action. Fighting comes for free during movement, and I think you get to continue moving. Yeah, you get to continue moving after you fight. The way fighting happens is, first of all, only navies work the same way as fleets, except they can only cross these bluish lines. You can only fight land units to land units, naval units to naval units. There's sort of an exception to that. But the way fighting is done is you destroy as many units as you have of the enemy's force. Just straight up swap, they're both killed. Now, in order to attack a city, you have to have an action left, and you spend that, mark yourself on the city or whatever to indicate that you're attacking it. The defense of the city has to be overcome. The defense of the city is going to be 1 for normal cities, 3 for temples, pluses for monarchy and democracy, plus 1 for every military unit in that region that's allied with that city. Which means you can go do a normal land battle and trim the city down and then hit it with the conquest afterwards. Of course, your units die after military battles, so that may not be terribly effective, but it has something to do with, you can use actions to move into the place, attack the units there, but to conquer the city itself, you need an extra movement point, as it were. So anyway, if you overcome that, you destroy the temple, which gets you a leader and a hero, and you get to take over the city, and it becomes yours at that point. The goal of the game is to get to a certain number of those characters. In the case of a 6-player game, that's 7 of them total. It is possible, because there are only 35 of them, well, everybody could have 6 of these, and that would be 36 characters. Well, so everybody could have 6 and one person has 5, and you're in a position where there are no more to gain. And at that point, if that happens, it goes into a sudden death, and the next person to get a temple, to destroy a temple, wins the game. As if there's an additional general, and that's it available. Everything is pretty much limited by countermix. There's one exception. If you do a coin and you can't get one, instead you can take any commodity that you like. Coins can be used as any commodity at any time. You're also able to trade commodities. Once you have all the know-how, you can trade 2 commodities for 1 of a different type, basically to turn into the equivalent of a coin. That's important simply because once you fill this up, gold becomes meaningless in the game. So your gold production would be kind of foolish. And that's it. It's fairly simple, really. Let's send this up.